Hello, hello. Welcome back to The Good, the Bad, and the Techy, a podcast all about leading edge technology. I'm VP of Engagement, John Collins.
And I'm COO, I guess, Howard Holton.
And this week we're going to be talking all about RAG. So let's get to it. RAG. Red, amber, green was what I first thought when I saw this RAG thing coming out. That's RAG, that's status, right? But the bigger context of RAG is AI, storage, models, people wanting to build stuff. And then for me, and this is probably because I wasn't paying attention, suddenly everyone's saying, it can't work without this RAG thing. So what did I miss? When did I blink and kind of suddenly the world changed?
Well, I mean, let's be clear, right? RAG is not a requirement of AI if all you're looking for is a language, right? If you want your LLM to respond to prompts and provide generic results based on all the data on the internet, you don't need RAG.
Okay.
Right? If you want to upload a PDF and ask questions about a PDF, you also don't really need RAG, right?
So this is the thing where if you don't have anything specific about your context that you care about, then you don't need something that's retrieval augmented, whatever. But if you do, then you've got to add kind of a bit of catalyst or something.
Correct. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. and what that means is you ask Gen AI a question, and before it consults the corpus of training data that it has within its database, it goes to the RAG first and looks for the answer there.
Oh.
Right. So that's all RAG is. RAG is a kind of a database that sits technically outside of the AI model, where the instructions are, before consulting the data in the model, consult the data in this database. And that allows you to upload all the data about your business without having to train a custom AI.
Cache?
No.
Why not?
Well, because the way cache works is data for fast retrieval, but it's not data for fast retrieval. It's a completely alternative data set.
Okay. It's saying I've already done that bit of analysis. I'll not need to go and redo.
Well, that's what cache is, right? So
yeah.
This says, okay. So here, this is what it is. Think of it this way.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask John a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Before you answer, John, I want you to consult the Encyclopedia Britannica. Rather than use your memory, I want you to use the Encyclopedia Britannica and check there first.
Okay. So it's like an FAQ.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be an okay way.
Okay, got it.
I realize that kind of makes it a little bit of a confusing concept, but I think the Encyclopedia Britannica thing works. Pick any book and replace Encyclopedia Britannica with your data set, right? All your emails, everything you've written, right? Again, it's not a training set because you're not retraining the LLM. You're giving the LLM reference material to check before it uses its training data. And since it was trained on the internet, it's not going to know about your employee handbook unless for some reason you've made your employee handbook public.
So it's less about context and it's more about the specifics of your situation, which sounds a bit like context, but actually it's more if you're in running a help desk in a pharmaceutical company and people keep asking you specific questions that happen to be your kind of questions, it would be that set of things.
Correct. Like a really good use case is to feed the RAG all of the data from your help desk, every ticket that's ever been opened that you have record of, and every response that's ever been given, every solution, every fix. Feed all that into the RAG. So then when someone asks a question, the first thing that happens is the AI tries to intuit what is the question actually, like what's the source of the question? What are we trying to get to, right? what's the intent of the question. Then it feeds all that into the, basically looks in the RAG for a response that matches, and then processes that response and returns that response. If it cannot find it, then it goes to its own training data to try to determine an answer.
Right.
It still attempts to give an answer, but it goes to the RAG first.
So why do I need that? Why?
Because training an AI, so training an AI is creating your own custom LLM, is very, 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 very expensive and time consuming.
Okay, so rather than doing that, I have a kind of a generic pool that could work across everything in the world, or a subset of that, and then I have a kind of specific blob of that's my stuff.
Correct. Well, you can also update the RAG minute by minute, right? I can continually update the RAG. You can't continually update a model, right? The training effort to iteratively train the model is enormous. So I can update the RAG continuously, and it's still going to search the RAG.
So it's the Pareto principle applied to LLMs. It's what's the 20% that's going to give me 80% of what I need, and therefore I spend 20% of the money rather than all of the money.
Yeah, in this case, it's probably 2% of the money.
Right.
Right. The challenge is it's far from perfect. Right. RAG is far from perfect. AIs are far from perfect to begin with. Right. But the best way to get the best result is a custom trained LLM. Yeah, that cost a fortune. Right. And so the ROI on a custom trained LLM, if you are not a massive tech company, is almost nothing. Apple today released its first model. Sure, it's got a 2048 token context window.
Is that big?
ChatGPT 4 and Turbo 4 Turbo and 4o, sorry, have 128,000 token context window.
So it's not very big.
No, it's tiny. Tokens aren't really equal one for one, right? So like the Apple tokens aren't really 100% equal to the ChatGPT tokens. That being said, they're reasonably analog. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word again.
Yep.
They're reasonably close. Even if it's a 4x, right? That's still only an 8,000 token context window in the language of AIs we're used to. It's very small comparatively. That might be okay for what Apple intends to do with it, right? So that may not be a bad thing, right? We don't want to grade these things equally until we know the intention behind the AI. But if you think about it, right, Apple is the number 1, 2, or 3 most valuable company in the world, depending on the moment, based on the stock market changes. And their first model was released to be the best model of 2022, which is the best quote I saw about it. But if you look at what Apple does and how they operate, they're not an enterprise tooling company, right? Is that context window big enough for you to get a good response on how does today's weather compare to the historical weather patterns in my area? That's probably plenty good enough.
This is fascinating because it's, as ever in tech, things are about compromises. We've got the reality is we don't have infinite processing. We don't have, you can't do everything in sub-second times, and you certainly can't deliver the data in sub-second times. And I used to, years ago, I did an interview with a guy called Augustin Hiore, French guy, on the Eurostar, funnily enough, very noisy. And he was telling me all about his dad's algorithms that his dad invented or worked out in the 70s. And it wasn't until the 90s that a computer was powerful enough to even run the algorithms, which enabled you to do, and you take a data set and you could do an exhaustive, essentially, it tried to find out everything about the data set that could be translated into rules. And then what it did was it flipped the whole thing and tried to find out everything about the data set that couldn't be translated into rules. And it kind of applied, so it kind of went constructively and then destructively. And the whole thing when it could first run, cost millions on a Cray. And then by the time I spoke to him, it cost tens of thousands on a non-Cray.
Sure.
And that concept of compromises within AI and so on. Now what we're talking about is, well, if you can't do all of the modeling of everything, how about you take a piece of that and it's your specific area of the universe. So just not even model that. You've kind of got the models, but kind of give me answers out of that stuff. And then if the answers aren't directly obvious, then yeah, go back a step and then
Right.
it's how you put the two together. But it's all about how we kind of make these trade-offs and compromises based on whether or not we've got the processors, whether or not we can afford the processing, how much time we've got, because it's all very well having a bit of a ramble now, but it's all very well having an answer in 3 weeks' time to someone. But if they needed it today because the house is burning down, it ain't going to be so much use, even if it's a perfect answer. So yeah, no, this is fascinating in terms of where we are with AI. And you said RAG before we even started talking. You said RAG isn't the answer to everything. Is this the kind of direction that AI is going to go, where it isn't this kind of big blue or deep thought, to quote Hitchhiker's Guide, which just knows everything, and it's more likely to be these kind of different models, different circumstances, different architectures, and then it's about orchestration? Would that be
So there's a lot of discussion right now on, so in addition to LLMs, right, large language models, there's also MLMs, medium language models, and SLMs, small language models.
Ooh.
We don't really talk much about the S's and the M's. Well, mostly because there's no big tech companies that are producing those for broad usage because they don't logically fit broad usage. However, if you think about it from the perspective of what if I can make a targeted language model specific to an industry and or a vertical? Like, can I create an LLM that rather than understanding all of a language and thus is trained on the broadest language set possible, which at this point is the public internet, can I train it just on case law from the United Kingdom? Right? That would be an SLM or an MLM. Right? Can I train it just on pharmacological data?
Yep.
Can I train it just on oil and gas exploration?
Yeah, no, I can see it being electronics. How you try to just architecture.
Yeah, architecture is a big one, actually. There's one of the things that I'm most excited about is to see what's going to happen with architecture in the next 3, 4, 5 years as we start to apply LLMs to, or Gen AI actually, to architecture, because architecture currently is limited by dimensionality in a tremendously huge way. In that, because it's designed by humans are limited by the number of dimensions they can hold together in their minds when conceiving of a design, right? And so that's things like what's the material requirements of a span? Well, I can't know all the material requirements of all of the options because the materials can change, right? I don't know enough about it to really dig into it, but the difference between a beam of pine, a beam of oak, a beam of steel, and a laminate is magnitudes of difference, right? There's no way for me to keep all that in my head, right? Now you add, okay, cool. My client has specific appearance requirements. That's a second dimension, right? My client wants fewer supporting beams, right? It's another dimension. Use of the space is another dimension. Building codes is another dimension. The materials for the roof, another dimension. Snow load for the area is another dimension. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. No, I think structural engineering tends to be, and I'm making this up, but it's the opposite of let's how we used to build cathedrals, which is let's hope it stands up, and if it falls down, we'll know. It's more let's put a whopping great big steel beam in there, and we'll know it's going to hold up.
Well, it's some mix of aim for the lowest common denominator and aim for the most affordability, which are variables, of course. Right? And I'm not trying to throw everyone under the bus. That being said, to your point, it's about risk reduction to a real high degree. Whereas 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 300 years ago, it was not about risk reduction.
Well, this is, I mean, I always thought a great place for AI, having, I'm very happy to be cynical about it in various places, but where I'm not going to be cynical about it at all is software testing, because we've never been able to work out by looking at a bit of software what tests need to be done. We've always been, testing's always been the poor nephew. I said it yesterday on the call. And we've always given it minimal resources and said that's all you're going to get. And what do you know? We end up with crap software or flaky software. But if we can throw AI at a software and says, well, here's the only test you need to know in order to be confident to a certain level, and here's the tests. And by the way, I've run them.
Right.
And therefore it means you can get on with everything else you wanted to get on with, and you can make far better software far more quickly. Same for buildings, same for anything you're constructing.
For sure. There are tools today that use AI for testing, but I think this is where Gen AI does have the potential to go another level deeper. The AI that I've seen for testing isn't generative. It's really just a level of automation. I'm not even sure it's technically AI. We were to really dig into it, right? Rather than just running a series of automated tests. But I do think the decision, the ability to use a generative AI as a decision feedback loop to determine what is the next test that should be run has tremendous potential and amazing appeal. And I would really like to see companies stop embracing marketing and start embracing the technology. Right?
I hear you. It's interesting that, so just to take that into it, anything that can be built ultimately is a model space in itself. So we talked about pharmaceuticals, pharmacological, I think was the word. I'm just going to show that I can say it as well, but don't ask me to say it again. But then anything that you can construct, be it physical, virtual, whatever, can benefit also from the product design side of things. So give me 50 designs for things that meet the same need, but that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of, and then give me the tests for them. Give me everything I need to prove whether or not that thing's viable, and then test it. Give me a wind tunnel. Show me the wing that I hadn't thought of, but then show me the wind tunnel.
Yeah, I think the taking Gen AI and adding it to AI technology like virtual twin holds significant appeal, right? So not only run virtual tests of virtual scenarios 1 billion times, but also design the test, interpret the results, create the loop, and then continuously feed the data, and only alert me once it rises above a certain threshold, and dynamically change the threshold so that the threshold makes logical sense. Right? Effectively remove my poor decision making from the process and just tell me what I need to do.
This does beg a question. So where was I? I was with a vendor in Barcelona who will remain nameless. Barcelona, and they said that there's definitely going to be like hundreds of models in the world that need supporting. And my head, I immediately went to the apocryphal Bill Gates 640K is going to be enough for anybody kind of world, because I think my hypothesis, just based on what we're talking about here, is if you can start actually using AI in the design process, and you can use AI in the design process for AI, there is no limit on the number of things that you're going to want to try to build. There's no limit on the model types. There's no limit on the models themselves. The only limit is our imagination and AI's ability to create.
Sure. I mean, currently there are 11,705 models available on Hugging Face.
Mm-hmm.
So not counting any of the proprietary models that people have built and not released publicly, there's 11,705 publicly available models that you can download and run locally, and most of them are covered under a license that allows you for relatively free reuse. Not likely commercial, right? Like I think Apple's is released for free personal use, but not free commercial use. But still, right? 11,705. Most of them are not going to be supported, right? And even the word support within the context of the models is kind of a misnomer, because there is no ongoing support from model once it's released. Because you have to define support, right? What does support mean? Well, I can't alter the model once it's released. To alter it, I have to effectively release a new model. So what does support mean?
I mean, it's like supporting a spec, isn't it? At that point, it's
kind of.
So
right.
You can support the thing that the specs specified that's now exists.
Correct. It's not a piece of code. It's not a software release in that way where I can make an iterative change and then release, right? Okay, cool. Version 0.7 of this code was released. Oh crap, we found a bug. Version 7, 0.7.01 was released. Oh crap, we found another bug. That's not how these work. Right? So sure, Llama v3 was released. We are immediately working on Llama v4. Then Llama v4 is released. Oh, cool. We found a problem with Llama v3. Great. Don't use it. That's the totality of your support. Right. So I think there's also a bit of a misnomer there of like, what does support look like within that reality? And a big thing that you need to understand, you being the audience listening to this, needs to understand about models is they are so very incredibly different in how they work, what they're good for, what they're useful for. In the same way, well, algorithms, like the applicability of an algorithm is the value of a data scientist. Here's the question that I have. Here's the data set that I have. What's the appropriate algorithm to use to answer this question with that data set, assuming the data exists within the data set? Right. Changing the algorithm changes the efficacy of the response, the cost of the response, the value of the response, the accuracy of the response by changing the algorithm. Well, the same thing is true in changing the AI model.
And this is kind of where I was thinking about the orchestration element, because ultimately we'll end up with, I mean, am I wrong that the RAG element is creating a multi-model environment? You've got two things going on there. You've got the kind of the simple model and then the more complex model, and you make a decision between the two, or at least
no. Well, it's not how I would describe it. I hesitate to say right or wrong because it's a odd way to look at it, I think. So think about it as two different pieces, right? So the model is the librarian. The RAG is the library.
Right.
Okay. So if you change the model, you change the librarian. And the librarian can be anything from a kindergarten librarian helping people find that kind of stuff and has that awareness of books to a multiple PhD in English, Russian, German literature, and knows 4 dead languages in the Library of Alexandria. Right. And so if you change the RAG, you change the data available in the library. If you change the model, you change the quality of the librarian.
So it's more interfaces and curation than it is the underlying
correct
model that's then interpreting the library and enabling it to be served up.
Correct. The better the model, the better its ability to intuit intention and then respond to that intention in an efficient and effective way. The better the RAG, the more personal the results will be. That being said, RAGs break at a certain point. So it also gets to a point where it gets to a point where you've exceeded what RAG can do, and you probably need to get into training your own model. There's also a real serious question of garbage in, garbage out in RAG. Right? Like, let's go back to that help desk ticket thing. Let's say you feed all of the data of the last 17 years from your help desk into the RAG. And over that time, you've replaced all of your systems 3 times. Near enough all of them, right? Like, you've had you've stuck with the Oracle ERP system, but you've had 17 upgrades in 17 years. And so 2 years ago, most of the process has significantly changed. We have 15 years of data that says do it this way, and 2 years of data that says do it this way. The 15 years of data is actually wrong because the process changed. No way for us to know that. Right? And so because you have 15 time, you have 7.5 times, which is effectively 15 years versus 2 years. I'm just assuming ticket numbers are the same. Right? The AI is going to go, this is the most likely result, therefore this is the result that I'll give to the answer to that question, even though the answer is wrong. Why? Because I gave it wrong data. It doesn't know anything. Right? It's still just a statistical model that says, statistically speaking, when this question is asked, these are the words that go together to create a response that answers the question correctly. Simply being the statistical correctness, not the knowledge correctness.
Based on the data that is at hand.
Correct.
It's very Sherlock Holmes, isn't it?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So
kind of deduces rather than knows.
Well, correct. It's still just a statistical model. It doesn't know anything. Knowing is a very human concept, and it's a concept we really need to pay attention to, and we really need to keep front of mind, right? And when you're talking to someone about AI, and they say, "Here's everything the AI knows," you need to stop them and say, "Can you define knows for me? Is it really knows, or are you just using shorthand?" Right? I try to be really cautious to not say this is what the AI knows, or this is what the AI kind of understands. Because the reality is it doesn't understand anything, and it doesn't know anything. It has a data set, and it analyzes a question. It's pretty good at using math to intuit what you're asking it. It's pretty good at then using a statistical model to say, when this question or questions like it have been seen before, this is the most likely answer to deliver on that. But that's not knowledge. That's just a statistical analysis that it does.
And the RAG is saying, look here first before looking further.
Correct. So if you think about that, the worse the data is that I put into the RAG, the worse the response is going to be, because I've said, if the answer exists here, use that answer first. So even if it has an alternative answer that could be a better answer in its training set, you've said, use the answer that I've given you. Right? So you can make the problem so much worse through, yes. I do want to start by apologizing to everyone if this has been confusing.
No, I mean, speaking of what I know and what I thought I knew before was just a bunch of terms. What I now know is a whole bunch more things, but I know that I need to know a lot more before I'll fully know.
Well, it's I'm glad I could help improve the education, but we're both on the same journey. I just may be 100 yards further down the road. Right. There's an infinite amount to learn here. And I also I'm beginning to question people who say that they're experts in this. Right? Because it's so dynamic, it's so fast, and Pandora's box is open. Right.
And this is, just because you're a good prompt engineer. I mean, this is so far beyond knowing how to say things to ChatGPT. to get a good answer. This is there's a whole new type of architecture that's evolving.
Correct. What I find really fun about this whole field is I'm not a good programmer. I've never been a good programmer. But I'm a super pedantic person that really appreciates the value of language and the precision of thought and then action that's created from the right language. I talk about it frequently. What that actually, and I'm a fairly logical person and I'm a good critical thinker. And what I have found is it makes me perfect for an AI age.
Right. Let's hope for us all, Howard.
Well, I'm glad I finally, after 47 years on this earth, found my niche.
Amazing.
Well, on that note, this has been another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Techie. Please like, subscribe, comment. If you'd like to have us come and speak more about this, if you want to learn more about this, please do reach out. If you're with a non-profit organization, we're happy to come speak at no charge if we can make that work. We'd love to help the world learn more and more and more about this without adding FUD, without adding confusion. So please like, comment, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on our next episode.